Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Rollup. My name is Kagan Dunlap, and every Monday through Friday, we put together 5 to 6 videos into a compilation to give you kind of like a daily update brief of things that are happening around the world in various ways. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Apparently, a bunch of protests broke out in Ukraine yesterday after President Zelensky signed a controversial bill known as the, quote, Anti-Corruption Oversight Law bill. So the protests broke out on July 22nd to July 23rd of 2025 in a number of major cities, including Kiev, Odessa, Lviv, Kharkiv, and this is following the passage of that controversial bill by President Zelensky. Apparently, the demonstrations were like some of the first significant wartime protests that have taken place since the full-scale invasion of 2022, primarily in response to the legislation that a lot of critics were arguing undermines the independence of key anti-corruption institutions. Apparently, there were thousands of people participating in the protests, chanting slogans like, quote, veto the law, and also, quote, protect Ukraine's future, while carrying signs emphasizing the need to safeguard anti-corruption efforts amid ongoing Western aid and Ukraine's aspirations for EU membership. The protests remained largely peaceful with no reports of major violence or arrests, though they highlighted the growing domestic frustration with the government's handling of corruption in Ukraine, especially during wartime. Now, the bill that was signed is actually called Bill 12414, also known as the Anti-Corruption Oversight Law, and was passed by Ukraine's parliament, which is referred to as the Verkhovna Rada. That's the name of Ukraine's parliament. And it was passed on July 22nd of 2025 with 263 votes in favor and only 13 votes against it. It was signed into law by President Zelensky shortly after, despite calls for a veto. And what the legislation does is it does a couple things. So it shifts oversight and control of anti-corruption investigations from independent bodies, such as the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, and it swaps it over to the Office of the Prosecutor General, which operates under the President's authority, meaning that if the President is under corruption investigation, the Prosecutor General, which operates under the President's authority, is the one that's going to be investigating him. So it's like, we found nothing wrong after conducting a thorough investigation of ourselves kind of thing. I mean, this is a pretty common thing you see around all over the place. But the key provisions to the law is that it grants the Prosecutor General expanded powers to intervene in cases handled by the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, including the ability to approve or halt investigations, reassign cases, influence personal decisions, and then critics contend that this centralizes power and could enable political interference, potentially shielding high-level officials from scrutiny. Now, the government's justification for this, as far as like Zelensky's side of the fence and like why they decided to do this, was they framed the bill as a necessary measure to cleanse the anti-corruption system of alleged Russian influences and ensure more efficient justice. So obviously you can decide what you think. I'm sure that there's probably a little bit of both. There's probably Russian influence all over the place in Ukraine, just due to their long-standing ties in the region and also their proximity, right? Although I don't know what scale that's at. So really, the bottom line up front is that Zelensky defended the law, saying that it would protect the country from foreign interference, like to combat the Russian influence on the country. And then Western allies were expressing alarm for it because they're referring to it as like consolidation of power. And there's concerns from countries that corruption is becoming a cornerstone of post-2014 reforms in the government. Some Western nations have said that the bill could jeopardize aid packages. So I don't know. We'll see how this turns out. An M18 modular handgun system had a malfunction which resulted in the death of a United States Air Force service member recently. And here's what I found about it so far. So if you go to the Air Force Global Strike Command AFSTRAT Air page, like the official Air Force page, it says AFGSC pauses use of M18 modular handgun system, published July 22nd of 2025. They published it about an hour ago prior to me writing or making this video. It says Barksdale Air Force Base. Air Force Global Strike Command has paused use of the M18 modular handgun system effective July 21st, 2025 until further notice. This decision was made following a tragic incident at F.E. Warren Air Force Base, Wyoming on July 20th of 2025, which resulted in the death of a security forces airman, which a security forces airman means like an MP, a military police. Out of the abundance of caution and to ensure the safety and security of our personnel, the pause will remain in place pending the completion of comprehensive investigations by the Air Force Office of Special Investigations and the AFGSC Safety Office. During this period, security forces airmen will be equipped with the M4 rifle, ensuring no lapse in AFGSC's security posture. While the investigations are underway, the AFGSC is collaborating with the Air Force Security Forces Center and Headquarters Air Force Security Forces to conduct a thorough review of the M18 and develop appropriate corrective measures. Furthermore, Security Forces Combat Arms Airmen at all AFGSC bases will conduct 100% inspections of the M18 handguns to identify any immediate safety concerns. Now that I know this is real, I was sent this memorandum for all Air Force Global Strike Command personnel that was issued and signed by Thomas A. Boussier, who is a general of the United States Air Force. The subject was immediate pause of M18 modular handgun systems operations. It says, 1. Immediate action required. Effective immediately, all personnel on AFGSC will pause use of the M18 MHS for all operational training activities until further notice. This pause will remain in place until completion of ongoing AFOSI and safety investigations into a recent incident at F.E. Warren Air Force Base. Wing commanders and DFCs will arm personnel with the M4 rifle in place of the M18. So that confirms what we read before in that previous press release. Now, I'm not going to put the point of contact down there because obviously I don't want to put this guy's information out there, but you can see it was stamped and signed by General Thomas A. Boussier. I think that's how you pronounce it. This is a tragic situation because we lost an airman. Like, an airman lost their life as a result of this. So it's going to be interesting to see like what comes of this investigation. Well, it looks like Japan and the United States' relationship is going to get even tighter because they just signed a major trade deal that was announced on July 22nd of 2025. This trade deal was a significant agreement that was aimed at addressing trade imbalances and enhancing economic ties between the two nations, who together account for 30% of global GDP, which is nothing small to balk at. Now, some of the key points to this are tariff reductions specifically, because there was a threatened 25% tariff that was going to be imposed on Japan if there was no trade deal reached by August 1st of 2025. So part of this trade deal reduces that threatened 25% down to 15%, including a pre-existing 2.5% tariff, particularly on like automobile and automobile parts. In addition to that, Japan is committed to investing $550 billion in the U.S., primarily in sectors like pharmaceuticals and semiconductors, through equity and loans to support Japanese businesses. Apparently, the United States is expected to receive 90% of the profits from these investments. Also, Japan is planning on opening its markets to U.S. products like cars, trucks, rice, and other agricultural goods. Now, this is going to build on some previous agreements and is aiming to increase U.S. exports and reduce the $63 billion trade deficit with Japan from 2024. Apparently, this is supposed to create hundreds of U.S. jobs, particularly in manufacturing and agricultural, which would align with the efforts to revive U.S. industry. Now, some of the ongoing negotiations that are part of this are things like steel and aluminum tariffs, which are currently at 50%, and those remain unresolved and are going to be subject to further discussions.
But I just signed the largest trade deal in history, I think maybe the largest deal in history, with Japan. And that was done with Japan. They had their top people here, and we worked on it long and hard, and it's a great deal for everybody. It's a great deal. A lot different from the deals in the past, I can tell you that. But we're doing really well as a country. We're strong. We have a lot of money flowing in. The tariffs are kicked in better than anybody other than me and a few of the people in the room thought could happen.
Okay, guys, so the monsoon season in Pakistan and the Punjab is insane, dude. Since June 26, apparently there's been at least 221 deaths, including 104 children and 40 women, along with 592 injuries nationwide. In Punjab alone, 165 deaths by mid-July and 135 deaths and 470 injuries overall. A 24-hour period saw 54 to 63 deaths and 227 to 300 injuries, mainly in Punjab. Over 800 homes have been damaged, more than 200 livestock lost, and then flooding inundated villages, damaging streets, and washing away vehicles all over the place, taking them downstream. The National Disaster Management Authority deployed 15,000 personnel and 800 boats for rescues, and emergencies were declared in multiple districts across the country. Now, the monsoon season in Pakistan started on June 26, and the national rainfall surged by 73% during that period of time. The Punjab recorded 124% excess rainfall from July 1st through July 15th, and overall 82% more in July in total, which resulted in flash floods across the entire region. Looks like Germany's going to be selling some fighter jets to Turkey. On July 23rd of 2025, Germany's Federal Security Council approved the export of 40 Eurofighter Typhoon jets to Turkey, marking a significant breakthrough in defense deals that has been stalled for nearly 2 years due to political frictions between the two NATO allies. The Eurofighter Typhoon jet is manufactured by a multinational consortium involving Germany, the UK, Italy, and Spain, with key companies including Airbus, BAE Systems, and Leonardo. And Turkey first expressed interest in purchasing these Eurofighter Typhoon jets in 2023 as part of its efforts to modernize its air force and also enhance defense amid regional instability, including a lot of the conflicts in the Middle East and tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean. Now, the Typhoon is a fourth-generation fighter known for its agility, advanced radar systems, and multi-role capabilities in air-to-air and air-to-ground missions. Now, Ankara has been specifically seeking 40 units, which is potentially worth billions of dollars to complement its existing fleet and also ongoing domestic products like the Khan 5th generation fighter. Now, this is going alongside a planned negotiation to purchase 40 F-16 jets from the United States as well. So a woman by the name of Alina Habba, who used to be a former personal attorney for the President of the United States with no prior prosecutorial experience, was appointed by President Trump in March of 2025 as the interim U.S. Attorney for the District of New Jersey. Now, her role was limited to a 120-day term under federal law unless it was extended by Senate confirmation or a court appointment, and it was set to expire on July 25th of 2025. Now, on July 22nd of 2025, 3 days before it was set to expire, a panel of federal judges in the U.S. District Court for New Jersey voted not to permanently appoint Habba or extend her interim term. Now, there was no explicit reasons provided in the court's order, and it was signed by Judge Renee Marie Bum, but the decision followed pressure from the Democratic leaders like House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who urged her removal amid concerns over her handling of cases involving Democrats and her close ties to the president. Now, instead, the judges appointed Desiree Leigh Grace, who's a career prosecutor who had served as Habba's first assistant U.S. attorney and the second highest ranking official in the office, as the replacement effective immediately. Desiree Grace was described by some people as a Republican with a decade of experience in the role and was seen as a more traditional non-political choice. However, just hours after the judge's announcement, the Department of Justice under Attorney General Pam Bondi swiftly fired Grace, which is interesting. Apparently, Bondi publicly stated that, quote, politically minded judges refused to allow Habba to continue in her position, replacing Alina with the first assistant, end quote. Now, it seems that the Attorney General and then the Deputy Attorney General for the United States were both saying the same thing, kind of saying that the judge's action to force Habba out prematurely is part of some sort of, quote, left-wing agenda, end quote. Though I'm not, based on what I've read about it, it doesn't really seem as cut and dry, but yeah. In any case, the firing drew sharp criticism from Democrats. Naturally, it would have drawn criticism from Republicans if the roles had been reversed. Specifically, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker and Andy Kim called it an attempt to, quote, intimidate and undermine judicial independence, end quote. All right, thank you so much for watching, guys. I appreciate you coming in here. If you've watched up to this point, that means you've watched all the way to the end of the video, which I appreciate because it helps the channel. It helps enable me to continue to do this type of stuff, and I hope that you guys enjoy it. Please let us know in the comments what you think about these videos, whether you think that they're good, whether you think they're bad. If there's anything you think that we can improve upon, please let us know in the comments. We do read the comments, and the editors do as well, so that way we can make a better product for you. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.